Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com.
Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern to talk about the Martian and Mars. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hello, space fans, and big week for Mars this week.
Yeah, well, it's sort of who knows, maybe they got their press releases done at the right time. The fact that the Martian's being released and also NASA announcing the presence of liquid water on Mars. We'll deal with those separately, but just to give you an overview, our collective fascination with Mars was kicked into overdrive last week with new findings from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MRO, providing the strongest evidence yet that liquid water flows intermittently on present-day Mars. Using an imaging spectrometer on MRO, researchers detected signatures of hydrated minerals on slopes where mysterious streaks are seen on the red planet. These darkish streaks appear to ebb and flow over time. And then, coincidentally, this past weekend, Ridley Scott's new film, The Martian, with Matt Damon playing a stranded astronaut, has debuted to solid box office and great reviews. And it also provides our first really big-budget Hollywood film about the red planet that was good. We all know we've talked about Mission to Mars and what was the other one? Red Planet, wasn't it?
Red Planet, yes.
So we're going to have a discussion about both of those things right now. Maybe we can start with The Martian and then we can move on to obviously NASA's announcements. I had a chance to watch The Martian yesterday, and you've read the book, so it's great stuff that Ridley Scott, when he fires, he actually does a really excellent job, and The Martian's a really good example of this. It's, even if you don't like science fiction, I think it's something that anyone could really enjoy. It's a survival story, so maybe like in a one-line synopsis kind of way, you could compare it to Gravity in the sense that, you got one person trying to overcome these horrendous obstacles to survive in such a inhospitable place. But the tone of the film was very different to Gravity. Gravity was very thrilling and sort of serious. And The Martian has got a very lighthearted sort of streak to it, which was unexpected. Even the previews that I saw of it don't really give that impression of it. You got Matt Damon there. He's grown his potatoes in his habitat there, and he's saying, "Yep, I'm the best botanist on this planet." With these wisecracks all the time. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So you've read the book, Steve. So and I guess the story is still kind of similar. This type of film can really help the public with, sparking their imagination for, what will eventually be, I guess, a manned mission to Mars eventually down the track, especially coinciding with this NASA announcement.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Andy Weir originally self-published this book. And if you ever hear him talk about it, and there's some great videos out there online, we might put a link up to one. He talks about how his original idea was, what if you were on Mars? And then effectively he throws every challenge at the Matt Damon character in the film, basically to, test them, to see how would you get out of each of these situations, how would you survive? And it's great, it's a great story because it's very much rooted in fact, or what we knew at the time. There are a few inaccuracies in the book, but also in the film, but they can be put aside because they deal with the concept of what a human has to go through in a foreign environment or an alien environment even. So, one of the big ones there, which they didn't know at the time when Andy Weir was writing the book, was, in fact, there's water in the soil of Mars. So rather than spending 5 or 6 chapters trying to make water from scratch, he could have just gone out and dug up some soil. And got the water out of it. But the interesting thing is that even though that might be an inaccuracy, the process he has to go through to make water, anyways, it's in the book and the film, is amazing because shows you what a human would need to do in those circumstances, especially if water wasn't available in the soil. And the way, of course, he makes water in the film is exactly what you'd have to do.
But it actually was done in a very entertaining way in the film too, because he almost blows himself up at one point trying to get the hydrogen and the oxygen to talk to each other.
Very dangerous business.
And again, there was the human there too. He said, he's talking about how he's going to do this, and then he says, nothing ever went wrong trying to get hydrogen trying to experiment with hydrogen to get what you need.
Yeah, that's right. It's a really interesting excursion into what astronauts face, and we've seen it in Gravity. Whatever you think about the inaccuracies in Gravity or in The Martian, the fact is that when you're in space, you don't have the luxury of taking your helmet off and walking outside. You don't have the luxury of going to a tap and getting water, or just going to the fridge and getting some food. To stay alive, it takes a lot of ingenuity, and it takes the ability to use any technology you have to keep yourself going. And that's why The Martian is such a great story. And it is a survival story, there's no doubt about it.
And just from a filmmaking perspective, Ridley Scott knows how to create an image, and he's created a lot of really amazing images in this film. Couldn't tell where any of the green screen stuff was, but I assume it was there most of the time, because obviously it would have been a studio-based thing. But it looked really amazing. And then there was obviously there's always comparisons to earlier films, like they got the spinning habitat on the spaceship, like 2001, and like they don't feel the need to explain it anymore. There was no explanation. Like, it could have been easy to say, why is this ship rotating? But maybe it's just something that people know now, or they don't need it explained to them.
And that's it. And it's one of the great
and if you don't, and of course, if you don't know why, it's because it generates gravity. But anyway, sorry, you were saying?
Well, that's a good point. But people do know that now. And what's amazing about it is that with Interstellar, Gravity, and The Martian, NASA now and the space agencies are working closely with Hollywood. So the imagery and most of what you're seeing is pieced together from the real images that they have. You don't see a green screen because they're using, ultra high resolution images that they've captured on Mars, and it looks like the real thing.
And purportedly, Ridley Scott gets along with NASA quite well, apparently, so I'm sure he got lots of cooperation out of it.
Absolutely, and look at how stunning these films look now and how accurate. I mean, remember for Gravity, they actually built a lighting rig to recreate what what sunlight is like in space, because you don't get the same angles that you do on Earth. So these sorts of things now are so real that the film is allowing us to immerse ourselves in that experience. And I think, we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's no mistake that NASA is making press releases at the same time that these films are coming out. These are great symbiotic relationships where, both organisations are sharing and helping with the space program and our knowledge of it. So we do know why the spaceship is spinning. So we do know what sorts of things we're going to face on Mars. And so when we hear the latest news about Mars, we listen, we've seen the movie, and we kind of understand, and we know more about Mars. We all know more about Mars because we should be getting excited about Mars, because in another 10, 15 years, humans are going to go there.
Yep. Exactly. So let's move on to that. The announcement that NASA made last week, I believe. Again, so we've described it, and it seems to be patterns in the way these darkish streaks, as they've called them, appear, and they darken and appear to flow down steep slopes during warm seasons and then fade in cooler seasons. They appear in several locations on Mars where temperatures are above minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit, and they disappear at colder times, which is exactly what you'd expect from the behavior of water, I guess. This is significant, and I guess, it's like they they've already made this excellent guesstimate that this stuff is there, and it's just a question of finding it. And it's significant because water is the sort of the basis of life and all that sort of thing, and where life comes from. So not that we're not we don't know this unless they're hiding underground, but maybe there's nothing like very complicated in terms of life there, but even if they find some bacteria or something, that'll be significant.
Oh, look, it's amazing, isn't it? To think that there's water up there. And, going back to The Martian, when they first wrote the book, they didn't know. And we're talking 10 years ago. They didn't know there was water in the soil. Now we have orbiters around Mars. We have rovers on Mars. We know about Mars. We can now see water flowing on Mars. This really changes everything. And you wouldn't want to be too sensationalist about this, but the fact that there's water on Mars would probably almost mean that we're going to see the possibility of life.
Absolutely. I guess
I don't want to go. I don't know.
I mean,
people up, but you'd say that it's almost certain.
The possibilities there at any rate. Whether they
possibility is very high.
Yeah. I guess the other thing to point out is that Mars is significant because it's really the only place we can go to relatively easily, in the sense that it's sort of close by in a solar system perspective. Obviously, it still takes ages to get there, but it's doable in the sense of if they get the tech right and they build the spaceship right and do all of that stuff and everyone's safe, they can get there and they can come back. So apart from the moon, it's really the only other place in the solar system for us at the moment that we can reach.
Well, that's right. I mean, we can't go to Venus because we get crushed and boiled and eaten to death by sulfuric acid as soon as we landed. But Mars, we can get to. 8-month journey, 8 months back. A few months you have to spend on the planet as well to wait for the Earth to line up again. But the really interesting thing about this is we think that's a long time, and obviously, if you're not on Earth, that's a long time to be away. But in the olden days, the old explorers who set off from Europe to the United States or down to Australia, they were 8-month journeys there, few months there, 8 months back. So really a couple of years, I think it sounds a lot, but once we know we can do it and once we've done it successfully, I don't think people will think that it's that long at all.
Oh, and then eventually down the track, we'll have whatever the equivalent of a 747 or is doing for us today. Gets us over there in 24 hours or something.
Well, if you had a skylift, it'd probably take you 5 days to get to the geostationary point, I don't know, at 36,000 kilometres in space or whatever it is. 5 days to get up there on your skylift, and then, yes, you could slingshot off and you probably be able to do a short version or something like that.
Exactly. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. It's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure we'll come back to it because NASA seems to be doing well with the announcements recently, haven't they?
Oh, look, it's fantastic. It's great for all of us that are curious about what's out there and curious about space. And it's fantastic, in the last 3 or 4 years we've been doing these vlogs that, we've seen science fiction come forward. I think it's repatriated filmmaking in general. I mean, they're great films, but they also are sharing great knowledge and a few flaws in them, but that's just the way it goes. I think the fact that we all know what the shortcomings are, but we can appreciate what space travel means and what it means for humanity is brilliant.
Absolutely. All right, so we'll wrap it up there. So thanks again for that. So don't forget our website, scitechculture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can interact with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. I'd love to hear from you. Subscribe to our YouTube and Vimeo channels and also our audio feeds, also on Stitcher Radio as well. And if you like what you see here, feel free to recommend us to anyone else that might be interested in these topics that we discuss on a regular basis. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.